What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Movie Emporium's continuation of the review of the Netflix original series Pacific Rim the Black. The series, of course, is based off the movies from Guillermo del Toro. Now, before we begin, if you like this channel, awesome, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome, hit that like button, as well as commenting below a new video to watch, including this one. And so, it's kind of nice finally that the series is released so I can actually talk about it a little more broadly and a little more open compared to what I was able to before. You know, thanks to Netflix allowing me to see it early. It's kind of nice to be a little more broad about what I think about the series and so on and so forth, give a little more explanation. So this is a spoiler-filled review. I will talk about the ending as well, so this is kind of ending explains as well. But the first 3 episodes, in essence, were a setup to what is happening in this last 4 episodes. We have the 2 kids who basically were left behind by their parents after the big war or whatever it was that caused a lot of damage in Australia. The kaiju have risen, so on and so forth, and they're roaming the outback and stuff like that. And the Jaeger that they have, the parents had, they took with them to do, to be prepared and stuff like that for more kaiju attacks. And so the kids, 5 years later, they find another Jaeger, and they basically learn how to use the Jaeger. The Jaeger is, of course, a sparring model. It's a practice model. It's not an actual, not an actual Jaeger you could put out in the field to fight kaiju. So that's not how that works. And so they find themselves at the end of episode 3 with a young kid that they find in this vat, similar to something like Luke in Empire Strikes Back. And in essence, the kid doesn't talk. Nobody knows what's going on. They call him Boy, like in God of War, which is pretty funny.
Boy.
And they end up at this place called the Bogan, which is this basically army style group of people that's being run by this guy named Shane. And to be fairly honest, Shane, and if you've ever listened to my Snowpiercer reviews, Shane is very much like a Wilford, where he's very controlling. He doesn't care what you think of him. He will murder you on the spot if you step out of line. And he's not a good individual. And we see it from the very beginning. We see it in episode 4 when he basically takes them hostage. And basically episode 4 is kind of like, how do we get out of this situation? How do the 2 young kids get out of the situation? How does they get Boy out there? How they take their Jaeger and stuff like that? And in the process, a kaiju attack happens, and basically they have to train pilots against this Jaeger or against this kaiju attack, and all the pilots fail. We have a character named Marshall who's actually voiced by Nolan North, believe it or not, and in the process he fails. All the pilots fail. I think actually one of them dies. And they have to rely on, of course, May, who is the second in command to Shane. She's a very strong-willed individual, is very forceful in her nature, but she has an underlining kind of history that we don't learn about till later on in the series. And her and Taylor, the boy in the series, have to confront this kaiju, and they end up failing, not only because of May and Taylor's networking problems, where the 2 kind of have their network, whatever you call it, connection, and they lose an arm on the Jaeger, and they lose and they run away, and they have to have Marshall set off some nuclear bombs to destroy the kaiju, and it causes a big mess with especially with Shane, who basically gave him a little bit of leniency, and now he's going to basically either kill these individuals, Haley and the boy and Taylor, if they don't leave, but if they stay, they will be dead, which is something he's going to commit to. And so the boy, Taylor, and Haley leave, and May learns that, of course, Shane has sent this guy named Richter to kill them, and kill him, and so on and so forth. And it doesn't sit well with May, and she ends up killing Richter. Richter actually gets a shot off on the boy, but the boy doesn't get hurt because the boy has, as we learn later on, very special properties. And that's basically the point where they decide in episode 5, which is the next episode, to escape from the Bogan. It leads into all this chaos and stuff like that. We have, of course, Marshall, the mechanic, who basically convinces May to go with them, and they fight off the army that Shane has and stuff like that, and they finally get away. And a lot of the episode also deals with the neural connections, stuff like that, of May, who's starting to learn that Shane is not only not her father, but is somebody who may have kidnapped her when she was young and taken her hostage, who kind of reprogrammed her, because when her neural connections basically get involved, it causes a lot of rifting problems. And of course, because of Haley and the boy being kidnapped, basically being put in jail, Taylor has to pilot the Jaeger himself solo, and that's always recommended not to happen. Of course, Loa, the AI, is like, this is not recommended. And I like how Loa, even though she's an AI, or at least female voicing AI, really has a personality, and she's like, really, it seems like she cares in her perspective ways and stuff like that. But it brings up a new form of interesting kind of ideas about piloting solo, where they give the ability to use a pilot's last memories or pilot's recorded memories to help someone pilot a Jaeger solo, but also to help them, with the neural connection and stuff like that. And so Taylor does that, and he gets some connections of a pilot who fought in the big wars, when they were younger and stuff like that. And it's really fascinating, because you always think about two pilots have to work together, but solo piloting is very dangerous with the amount of like how much it works on your brain and how much it like overheats you and stuff like that. So watching Taylor do that is really interesting. And of course, May defects from Shane, which causes a lot of issues for Shane. She and Haley help escape the situation, which is kind of cool. It's a lot of good action. It's what you expect from Pacific Rim. Is the bad guy's over the top and silly, but he has some menacing qualities about him. To watch them escape it's a lot of fun. But so this leads to the end of episode 5. I know I'm moving through this pretty quickly, but this would be like a 40-minute episode if I talk to each episode by episode. But basically, they get far enough away that Shane can't track him and stuff like that. And Shane calls May on this radio comm system that they have, which is something to keep a track of each other. And instead of May answering, Marshall answers, and he's talking to Shane, and Shane's like, I always have collateral damage protection or whatever. And what I was not expecting, and which I'm sure a lot of people weren't expecting, is Marshall's head gets blown up. The thing is a bomb. It explodes and basically deheads Marshall, or blows his head up or something. I guess you could say similar to scanners or something like that. And the character Marshall, which was actually a fun character throughout the 5 episodes that he was in, or through 2 episodes that he was in, is dead. And it causes some real hard-hitting issues of Meg, and she walks off on her own, and so on and so forth. And it's pretty graphic. Like, I mean, it's not like you don't see his head actually explode, but you see blood hit May and Haley and all that stuff. So Marshall he's dead. He gone. All that good stuff. So we get to the last 2 episodes of the series for the season 1, and we get a lot of big revelations about Boy and May and all that good stuff. But episode 6 is basically about the Jaeger that's been following them since episode 2 or 3 or whatever. That's when they discovered Boy and Meridian. And in essence, what ends up happening is they end up going after Boy, who's kind of disappeared because there's been a bunch of big breaches that have happened. And they get to another breach where they find Boy, and this big kaiju pops out and so on and so forth. And in essence, the kaiju's coming after the Jaeger that the Haley and Taylor are in and stuff like that. And so this Jaeger comes out of the breach and basically kills the kaiju. It just destroys it. But what's interesting about this Jaeger is the simple fact that it's a hybrid kaiju / Jaeger. It has teeth, it has the abilities of a kaiju, but also has the mechanics of a Jaeger. And we learn that this kaiju hybrid / Jaeger hybrid is basically a thing that had kind of evolved and had combined itself into this apex predator, which has no affiliation to either side and was destroying both sides, without remorse. And it goes to attack the down Jaeger that Haley and Taylor are in, but it stops, and we find out the Boy stopped it. And that's where we learn about the whole idea of what is going on with the Jaeger and kaiju system and stuff like that, how they've combined with one another. And it basically leads into the revelation of Boy having some kind of back history with kaiju and Jaegers and stuff like that. And the kaiju hybrid Jaeger basically goes and finds this arm for the Jaeger that's down, the Haley and Taylor Jaeger, and it basically goes off and eats the dead kaiju. And like I said, it's everything's good and gone, and that's the end of the episode 6. We find out that there's hybrid kaiju Jaegers, which is pretty crazy. So, but that leads into episode 7, where they end up in this big city, where they kind of reconvene with May, who was there for reasons of her past. Find out that she was basically taken as a hostage, by Shane. And basically, there's another kaiju attack, this big kaiju breach and stuff like that. And basically, this is where we get the revelation of who Boy is, why he doesn't talk, why he seems to have real connections with Jaegers and kaiju, why he is able to stop a kaiju in the middle of a fight without any help. And it turns out in Meridian, this boy was an experiment. He was in the tube for a reason. He is basically a kaiju that has been experimented on and has been made to look like a human being. And in essence, when the kaiju that attacks in that episode, he turns into a giant kaiju and fights the creature. I mean, unfortunately, he loses and the building collapses upon him. So we are left with wondering if he's going to die or not. But it's a simple fact that we learn of the character Boy is basically a kaiju. That's why the apex predator didn't kill him or anything like that, because he knows what the boy is, and therefore he is a protector of him and stuff like that. And it leads into, of course, some really good moments where we basically see the Jaegers. There's another Jaeger, the parents of Taylor and Haley they find their parents' Jaeger, which is down and been destroyed. Their parents have escaped to go to Sydney. And of course, like I said, they have to get back to their own Jaeger to fight this kaiju. They do some real damage on the kaiju. And in essence, they are able to destroy the kaiju with a nuclear bomb, injecting itself into the kaiju itself, and the kaiju exploding. And that's a really fun moment. Like I said, the only thing that Pacific Rim has always done for me to make it exciting is the kaiju Jaeger attacks, which are always a lot of fun. And like I said, at the end of this episode, to kind of do like an ending explains, we see creatures on the top of the roof. They're like manipulate kaiju dogs. And we see this like cultish type group, which have no faces. They have faces, I think they're masked, but they are basically saying that the kaiju Messiah has arrived. Now, the kaiju Messiah, I'm assuming they're talking about the boy, but it's fascinating to think about, because to me it leads into some really interesting ideas and theories about the simple fact that Pacific Rim, at least the movies, were always about creatures versus robots, big giant monsters versus robots. So it never really had a lot of depth to it. And so when a series came around like this, and you get down and you watch the series, there's a lot more going on than we expect, at least my understanding of what's going on in the series. And we see it with those last few words before this season ends, is a Messiah, a kaiju Messiah. Now, what does that mean? I'm not 100% entirely sure, but I think there was always a lot more going on with the Pacific Rim, and the idea of this kaiju breach that's been happening that has involved with maybe cults or maybe mysticism or like mythological deities and stuff like that, about past basically having some kind of revelation or some kind of foretelling of a creature coming that will save humanity. I mean, it leads into some really interesting and fascinating ideas about what exactly is this Pacific Rim even about anymore. I mean, was there something that Guillermo del Toro had in his like notebook or about the kind of mythology about the Pacific Rim world? Is this something that the creators of this TV series felt that it could be really interesting, intriguing to have a kaiju Messiah, somebody that Messiahs are usually somebody that are really important or foretold to come in the future. Sometimes it's for good, sometimes it's evil. But this kaiju, that's the boy, I have a feeling if he's the Messiah, that he is there to save humanity from the breach. And I'm curious of how long they're going to keep the series going. If they're going to leave it at 2 seasons, or they're going to go into 3 seasons. It depends on Netflix in general, but they're basically to me, they're basically ramping up to something very big and very exciting for the Pacific Rim universe that was never, ever, ever even remotely intriguing about the movies. Like I said, the movies were very much robots versus monsters, and here we're getting mythology, which is something I never expected out of a Pacific Rim property. So I'm really fascinated and really excited by it. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, you have, like I said, the big kaiju fights, the big monster fights and stuff like that versus, robots. You have some intrigue with the characters themselves, the bad guys and stuff like that, which are a little moot now that these, whatever individuals in the last episode are. But overall, that's my feeling on what's going on, what's going to happen, the ideas and explanations and stuff like that. But me personally, this is my honest opinion. I think this is a really good series. I really do. I think it's fun. I'm not the hugest anime fan, but I think this is a well written, well enjoyable, very in depth series that has a lot of good, moments, has a lot of good action, has a lot of stuff that I think was missing from the original Pacific Rim, and it has characters you actually care about compared to the Pacific Rim movies, which didn't really have characters I really cared about. I know people really wanted just the kaiju battles and the Jaeger battles. But I think putting this much thought and energy into a series and making it more fleshed out really helps the Pacific Rim property. So, like I said, I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with season 2. And after watching all 7 episodes, I'm going to give the series a 8.5. You know what? Let's do it. Let's give it a 9 out of 10 because it really was a fun series. It had some minor issues with plotting, and because anime, some things get a little too over the top and goofy and far-fetched and stuff like that. So overall, I really enjoyed the first season. I hope second season really keeps the momentum going, and I'll be interested to see what they do with these individuals that have shown up at the very end of the season, causing a cliffhanger. So, but that'll do it. That'll be my take on episodes 4 through 7 of Pacific Rim: The Black. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the season. Do you feel it really does a nice job of fleshing out Pacific Rim universe? Did you not like it? Tell me why. All that good stuff. Are you looking forward to season 2? But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. And if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, see you guys on the next video. Peace out.